Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to Inside Agriculture with me, Emmanuel Mwemba. Of course, in the studio, I'm not alone. I'm with my co-presenter, Claribel Musonda. Claribel, welcome to Inside Agriculture.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thank you. How are you today?
Very fine. How is the afternoon?
The afternoon is going well.
Talking
Here
about
to
our
ensure
Inside
that
Agriculture.
farmers are fed with right information.
Exactly.
Yes,
they need
yes.
to be fed.
Very much.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, today on the program we discuss the value of agroecology in agriculture, and in the studio to help us discuss this conversation we are joined by Participatory Ecological Land Use Management Zambia, Perum Zambia Country Coordinator, Mr. Wamunima Muketoi. Mr. Wamunima, welcome to Inside Agriculture.
Afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Great. Just to kickstart the conversation, can you briefly tell us about Perum Zambia and how you support farmers here in Zambia?
Yeah, thank you so much. Like you mentioned, PELAM stands for Participatory Ecological Land Use Management. It's a membership-based network. We work across Zambia through our members to reach the communities. But also PELAM Zambia is part of the PELAM Association network, which is found in 14 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa, with the same mandate of working with smallholder farmers in agriculture and environment sustainability. So as PELAM, we try to build capacity around agroecology within communities to promote sustainable practices in agriculture and also sustainable use of natural resources for improved livelihoods in communities. We do this through a lot of interventions. For instance, we train farmers in certain practices which are sustainable in agriculture. We also train farmers in issues around policy so that they understand the policy environment that they are working in and appreciate what the government has in offer for them through the government policies. We also do a lot of awareness and information sharing. I think agriculture is not only for the smallholder farmers,
Yes.
but I think the general public and everybody else who also consume the produce has to be, knowledgeable about certain practices and what is, being produced. And last but not the least, as a network, we try to have strategic partnerships, not only with members, but I think we are trying to create a bigger voice around sustainable agriculture. So we work with other strategic partners who also have a similar vision in agriculture, so that we have this mass, population or entities that are actually promoting sustainable agriculture for the well-being of the communities, improved livelihoods, and also above all that, I think agriculture is one of the strategic sectors for the economy.
Great.
So we need to have people working around agriculture for us to achieve all these different objectives.
Great.
Great.
Claribel.
Mr. Muketoi,
Yeah.
correct, right?
Yes.
Yes. When we talk of agroecology, what is agroecology, or how can you explain agroecology to a farmer using conventional farming?
Yeah. So agroecology, I think there are quite a lot of definitions. There's no particular definition. But generally, when you're looking at agroecology, we're actually looking at agriculture that is working with nature and not against nature. And also, when you're practicing agroecological practices, you are trying to reduce the use of synthetic chemicals and fertilizers that are in the green revolution kind of agriculture, where we rely so much on synthetic chemicals and fertilizers. So agroecology tries to shift that dependency on synthetic chemicals, but then start working with nature. And by nature, I'm saying we use things that are natural, that won't damage the environment, that won't damage the soil fertility. Things like compost, manure from animals, and green manure from trees that can actually improve the soil fertility. And so agroecology tries to work with nature. And also with agroecology, we say we want to go back to how we used to do farming, with our forefathers. There is a huge component in agroecology that identifies indigenous knowledge. And that indigenous knowledge is valuable, which you can also then integrate with the modern science. So agroecology talks about mixing indigenous knowledge and the modern science in agriculture.
Okay, so can you say organic farming is part of agroecology?
Absolutely.
So agroecology is the mother.
Yes,
organic farming
agroecology
is the child.
Absolutely,
Okay.
you've got right. So organic farming is a component of agroecology, because with organic farming you have specific motives around that organic farming in terms of how you produce the food, and also that there's certification. When you're doing organic farming, you have to certify that actually the produce was produced in an organic way, that it has completely no chemicals added in terms of its production. So, but agroecology, like you said, is the overall framework of agriculture, and organic farming is just a component of it.
No synthetic chemicals.
Yeah, you just
only nature.
Imagine.
Nature. We go back to what God has given us.
Yes, which also helps us to produce health food.
Exactly.
Clarabelle,
thank you so
for
much.
For benefit. Now, Mr. Muketoi, coming to the principles, which agroecology principles should a smallholder farmer using conventional farming method should understand in order to adopt this practice, actually?
So under agroecology, we have about 13 principles that are embedded in agroecology. But I think for farmers, we can isolate a few, which probably could be critical. And one of them is around soil health. You know, that farmers should actually focus on how to improve the soils for them to, practice agroecology. And also there's the issue of diversity. In agroecology, we promote diversity in production. So you don't only grow one crop, but you have quite a number of crops that you actually grow in agroecology. And that has a lot of benefits. I think it's a long discussion, but when you have multiple crops, there's resilience, you spread your risks, and you have a number of income opportunities, not only from one crop. So those are some of the principles that in agroecology, like I said, also there's also the component of incorporating knowledge. So there's co-creation of knowledge. Farmers do not only receive the knowledge in agriculture, but they have the knowledge as well. And in agroecology, we promote co-creation of knowledge so that farmers are also able to say, this is how we used to practice farming, and how does it integrate with the modern science. So there's that co-creation that you find in agroecology. So those are some of the principles that I think are important in agroecology that farmers can actually look at and say, how do we improve on agriculture using these principles?
Great. You have talked about an important aspect in agroecology, which is biodiversity.
Yeah.
What risks does monoculture poses to farmers?
Yeah.
Actually, who likes just growing one crop year in, year out?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very important question. And I remember someone saying Zambia was becoming a maize-centered, country in terms of agriculture production. And what it basically means when you have a monoculture system is that you're only planting one crop over large, areas of land. And that has quite a lot of implications. Firstly, because you're using one crop, you're actually using a lot of land, which is ultimately going to be degraded because you're just using it for the same crop. And also because of the using one crop, you actually realize that it also encourages pests and diseases, because then you don't have a system that can chase away the other pests. So they actually create an environment where pests become more in a crop. And also because of monocropping in terms of economic benefits, you have a risk of economic vulnerability. Say, for instance, a crop loses value because maybe it has been mass produced and there's so much of maize on the market. You find ultimately the price can drop. And that puts a farmer at risk in terms of their economic gain. So monoculture has that economic challenge that farmers can face by just actually engaging in one crop. And I think even just the resilience of a farmer becomes vulnerable. Without spreading so much of your production, as a farmer, you risk your benefits out of agriculture. So monocropping restricts you in terms of your economic benefits. It exposes you to environmental risks that are coming through the use of just farming one crop.
Great. Okay. Clarabelle, agroecology supports biodiversity.
Exactly.
And in as much as you are doing biodiversity, remember of intercropping.
Exactly.
Mr. Muketoya has talked about crops that are resistant to pests. If
Exactly.
you are growing one crop year in, year out, you may end up experiencing same pests attacking your crops.
So you need
Clarabelle.
to change.
You
This
need to
year
change.
groundnuts, the
Yeah.
other year maize, the
Yes,
other
yes,
year
yes.
wheat.
You put soya beans.
The other,
Yes.
it
Leguminous
also improves
crops.
the soil fertility.
Soil fertility,
I think
yes,
so.
yes, yes.
Coming to soil fertility, how does agroecology change the way farmers manage soil fertility?
Yeah. So with agroecology, like I mentioned, we're trying to move away from the use of synthetic chemicals. And of course, when you give farmers that this is not right, you have to give them the right options which you think are able to adopt. So when you look at soil fertility through agroecology, we have quite a lot of options available. And one of them is the use of manure and compost, which farmers can then use to put into their soils to improve fertility. What happens then is that you're actually improving the organic matter in the soils. And we know that soil is a living thing. You find a lot of organisms that are in the soils that actually improve the aeration, the fertility of the soil. So when you put in organic matter, you find that the soils become better and they have more nutrients for long-term benefits of the farmer. So farmers, by using the compost and manure, are able then to improve the soil fertility. We also have, like you said, crop rotation. We have plants that actually fix nitrogen into the soil. So when you're doing crop rotation, crop rotation or mixing crops in your fields, you find crops like legumes actually fix nitrogen and improve the fertility of the soils. So farmers are able to improve fertility. We also have agroforestry, where you plant trees in your fields. Those trees actually also fix nitrogen. They drop leaves into the soils and improve the organic matter and the soil structure, and ultimately fix nitrogen, which cereals, for instance, take as nutrients. So farmers then, their dependency on synthetic chemicals becomes less, because the natural environment is then being promoted to actually have a soil that is fertile for farmers to plant trees. You may know that a plant doesn't only need nitrogen and phosphorus and the NPK and urea, but there are a lot of other nutrients that plants need. And through the compost and the manures and organic matter, you find the extra nutrients that crops need will be actually made available, and that improves the soil fertility structure.
Great.
Great, wonderful. What a practical insight coming from you, Mr. Muketoya.
Yeah.
Now, talking about the benefits, a farmer watching right now, they may be questioning themselves, what benefits do I get from crop and livestock diversity?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very important, and I think in agroecology we are also now trying to promote integrated farming, where you mix your crops on the farm with animals, and I think the benefits are a lot. So one thing that you find with people who are doing crops and animals is that they will use the manure from animals to fertilize their soils. So that means, like I said, you are reducing your cost on buying fertilizers, because then the crops are being, fed by the manure from the crops. And also you have residues from the crops, like crop maize stalks that, after harvesting your maize, which you can feed your animals. So you have that interrelationship between your crops and animals on the farm. And for a farmer, the benefit ultimately is that you are reducing your costs in terms of buying chemicals and fertilizers to improve your soils, and also reduces your cost, for instance, on feed. If you have green vegetables, if you have chickens, for instance, you can feed your chickens from the green leaves that you get from your gardens, and reduces on your cost on chicken feed. So that integration of crops and livestock on a farm is very cardinal. And also the benefit of, like I said, you have different incomes on your farm, and not only from crop, but also livestock provides you an extra income. And so those benefits are essential for farmers, and also in terms of economic, environmental benefits, you all find them once a farmer actually goes into integrated farming.
Great, Emmanuel. You've talked
Yes,
about
Cargo.
benefits, Mr. Mkotoi. What about the challenges? Do farmers face challenges when adopting this agroecology farming?
Absolutely. So, for instance, for Pelham, we've been actually promoting agroecology for quite some time now. And we do realize that there are certain challenges that are not really giving us the adoption rates that we would want, that farmers could actually go full-time into agroecology. And some of the challenges really are, firstly, in terms of inputs. If you look at inputs in agroecology, or biofertilizers that are not synthetic are quite a challenge. They are not available on the market. And so farmers, even if they would want to buy organic fertilizers, they won't find them. So ultimately, they'll just buy what is available. And agroecology is knowledge intensive. So this is a practice that you just don't cultivate your seed, plant your seed and your fertilizer and sit back. But you have to manage your fields. You have to inspect your fields that they are not being attacked by pests. They are not, wilting. And so it's something that you constantly need to do as a farmer to make sure that your crops are growing properly. And so with that intensity, farmers feel a bit lazy to go full-time into agroecology. We've also heard from farmers that it's labor intensive, that you have to use your hoe to cultivate 2 hectares, which is, I believe, is quite intensive. But the gap there is that we have technologies that farmers can integrate in agroecology. But I think the notion has always been that agroecology is primitive, and we should continue using the hoe, which is not right. As agroecology, like I said, you are integrating indigenous knowledge and the science. So the science provides technology, like small tractors that farmers can adopt and use on small-scale farmers. And that is a gap that is there. So that would actually reduce the people complaining that it is labor-intensive. The other thing that we've seen is markets for agroecological produce. If you go into communities now and ask farmers why they're not producing millet, for instance, or sorghum, they'll tell you we don't have a market. Some have produced it and they'll sit in their houses with 20 bags of millet and there's no market.
But here in Tanzania, it has a lot of market.
Yes.
Millet.
Absolutely.
So if we are to grow millet in Zambia, in Tanzania, it's a market.
Yes.
It's a market, so we're able to
Absolutely.
sell there.
So we don't have the market linkages. And farmers, you find a farmer in Milenge, for instance. How do they know about Tanzania? They don't have the information. They don't have the linkage. There's no one who will come and tell them, there's a market for you in Tanzania.
But as Pelham, don't you carry sensitization messages
and
inform the farmers?
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do. And to bridge that gap, of course, we have to work with private sector for them to actually have people who can buy and offload these crops onto the market. So we have quite a huge campaign now that we want to do in terms of market linkages, and that will actually force us to work a lot with the farmers and private sector. Of course, definitely.
Yeah, marketing. We are information experts, so we need to inform people.
Definitely.
We need to give them the right information,
Absolutely.
and Zanis is the best place where you can deliver this message to the farmers countrywide.
Absolutely. Yeah. So these linkages are actually necessary in agroecology, and when we talk of agroecology, I should say that we are not only looking at production, because agroecology looks at the whole value chain. So we need, like you said, the private sector. Even consumers need to be made aware of agroecological produce. We have now issues of non-communicable diseases, which are attributed mostly because a lot of the food that we are eating is contaminated with residues from chemicals that we are using in agriculture. But through the adoption of agroecological production and organic farming, you are reducing the use of chemicals. And that's the only way you're going to reduce these non-communicable diseases. So in agroecology, we're also looking at health. How does the health sector come in and sensitize people that you need to eat the right food?
Exactly.
How do we talk to the standards people that the food that is going on the market is the right food with the right standards, with no residues of chemicals for people to actually benefit from it. So it's a whole value chain. We need processors, people who add value to these crops. So agroecology looks at the whole value chain, right from production up to the consumer.
Great, great. I think the information that you have just given, Mr. Muketoi, also brings me to ask this question. What strategy are you using to reach farmers, especially in rural areas, to ensure that they are fed with right information to best practice agroecology?
Yeah. So there are quite a lot of avenues that we are using. And I must say, I think in the civil society organization now we have quite a lot of people trying to promote agroecology. But for Pelham specifically, like I said, we work through member organizations. And like I had mentioned in my introduction, awareness creation and information sharing is one of the key things that we want to do, that we do in Pelham. And so we disseminate this information to communities. We use platforms like community meetings. We know there's quite a challenge, for instance, with TV, that maybe communities won't be able to access TV. But we have now communities that have community radios. So we use the radios as well as a platform where we disseminate information on the benefits of agroecology. And for those that have access to internet, we have a Facebook page, we have a website, and we also produce knowledge products. Knowledge products, I mean things like pamphlets, posters, that we also translate into local languages, and we use these in the communities. I must say we've had some help, quite a lot of help from ZNBC in terms of translating some of these materials into local languages, and you distribute them to the communities, and they relate them because they're able to read the language, and some of them are just pictures which people can easily understand. But despite that, I think there's still a lot of that needs to be done, and partnerships with different organizations is still necessary for us to disseminate more information into the communities on agroecology and the benefits that come with it. So opportunities still exist for collaboration to disseminate this information into the communities. And also even within the urban areas, I think we also shouldn't neglect the urban areas, that they also need this information. We are happy that we have matebetels now that are mushrooming, and that is a huge opportunity for agroecology because people want to eat healthy food. If you go to the hospital, people with diabetes, BP, they are taught to eat certain foods and they rush to matebeto. So that's an opportunity for farmers to produce organic food that they can sell to the urban market.
Great. So how is the response from the farmers that you are engaging from the time you started operating here in Zambia?
The response is quite huge. I think farmers have realized the many challenges that they are facing in agriculture, not only with the climate change of production, but also they do realize that when they sell the maize, I think the income they get is not as much. We've had communities where they would talk between themselves and say, well, I produced groundnuts, for instance, and the medal of groundnuts cost me higher than maize. So they see the opportunity that we are taking to them, and they want that support to be taken into communities for them to actually go into agroecological production.
Great.
Thank you so much. Mr. Muketoi, you talk about those pamphlets, education materials, and farmers, you approach them. For a farmer who's listening right now, if they want to get more information about agroecology, where can they find Pelham Zambia?
So Pelham is based in Lusaka. Unfortunately, we only have an office in Lusaka, based at Monongushi Conference Center. But we do have a website, pelhamzambia.org, if people want to go on the internet. We also have a Facebook, Pelham Zambia Facebook, where we constantly update farmers and the communities on the different projects and interactions that we are doing, and also deliberately sending out information around agroecology. So we do have those platforms. But we also use our members in the network that are spread across the country. When they interact with communities, they'll talk about Pelham, especially if we have a project running, then for them to get more information.
Okay, when it comes to food security in Zambia, how can agroecology contribute to food security in Zambia?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and I think it's something that really needs to be looked at, because we always talk of food security.
Yes.
And when we say we have a bumper harvest of maize and we say that's food secure, that's not really food security. Food security needs...
Bumper harvest is not food security?
It's absolutely, that's maize.
Oh, great.
Food security, you need the diversity of food. You should not only have maize, because with food security, you also need nutrition security. And you cannot get the nutrition you want only from maize. You need the other crops to also provide that nutrition. And also when you talk of food security, it's the accessibility and affordability that people are able to get any food that they want to eat. And if you only produce maize, then you're not really addressing the issue of food security.
It's not balanced.
It's
the
not
nutrition
balanced.
aspect
Absolutely,
is not balanced. So we talk about food security and nutritional
nutrition security. Yeah. So you need that diversity to be in agriculture. So yes, maize is our main food, and we definitely should continue producing the maize to feed the nation. But in terms of the security and nutrition that we need as a country, currently now we are still struggling with malnutrition at about 34%. And this has been on for a long time, and we cannot address that. And it can only be addressed when we have the right food that we can be fed to the young children and the population at large. So we need the diversity, and that's the only time we'll talk about food security. When we have maize, we have the vegetables that we need. You know, we shouldn't be importing onions from outside. We shouldn't be importing potatoes and other crops. Those are things that we need to produce in the country. If you look at statistics, for instance, we have a shortfall on almost all the crops that we have, we need in the country. Even fish, we have a deficit on fish production, and we need to increase production on that. So that's the security that we need, that we are able to produce the quantities of fish, of maize, of all the vegetables that we need, of fruits in the country, and then we can call ourselves that we are food secure because we have those food produced and available in the country.
Great. So you are talking about security and nutrition. What policies would you think the government would adopt in line with agroecology to improve the healthy aspect of the citizens?
Yeah, so that's policy alignment actually is very critical in this regard. And I must say that actually for us as Pelham, we are happy that government is now developing an agroecology strategy for the nation. And after a long term of lobbying and advocacy with government, we finally reached a point where a strategy is being developed on agroecology. And I think that will bring quite a lot of benefits in terms of promoting agroecology. But despite that, we've realized that there's need to align a lot of other policies to agroecology, because we've seen some conflicts in some of the policies and strategies that exist. For instance, the policy around seed, has to be aligned to agroecology. The current seed policy is promoting the hybrid production of seed and the local seed, which is actually declining in communities. And that's why you find the diversity of the local seed is actually missing in the policy. So we want the seed policy to be aligned to agroecology. And it can only be aligned if the policy now identifies that we need to promote the production of indigenous seeds in the country. And that is the only way we can have that diversity. The others are around health. We also need the policy on health to be aligned with agroecology, that certain foods can only address health issues if they are aligned with agroecology. So these are some of the issues and policies that we need to have government aligned, so that when you speak of agroecology, there's no conflict with another policy. Even the forestry policies should be able to speak to agroecology, because under agriculture, you're trying to expand, for instance, land for cultivation. But in some areas, it's actually encroaching onto forests. So those policies should speak to each other and ensure that even if we're expanding on agriculture, we're not encroaching on forests, for instance. So a number of policies need to be aligned with agroecology, and I think that's how we are going to get the bigger benefit of going into agroecology.
Great. Clarabel, actually, I know when we are talking about the value of agroecology in agriculture, we can go on and on, but time is not with us. But the good part is that the room is always open for Mr. Wamunima Muketoi to come again and share more insights with the farmers watching right now. Mr. Wamunima Muketoi, thank you so much for making an appearance on Inside Agriculture.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Great. Dear viewers, this is where we've come to the end of Inside Agriculture. Today we are discussing the value of agroecology in agriculture, and our guest has been Wamunima Muketoi, Country Coordinator for Pelham Zambia. He was just here to share more insight on how best we can practice agroecology in our farming activities. From me, Emmanuel Mwemba, and my co-presenter, Claribel Msonda, not forgetting the entire Zanis production team, this is where we say goodbye and continue enjoying the rest of our programming.